the citations within the paragraphs. Like if you use the book, quote, Perry et al., comma, 2023, put it somewhere. Because if you're giving me information, you're not an expert. So I want you to make sure that you get the citation. Also, if you did get a 20, make sure you go back, because I gave some really great information on AdPi and how to use AdPi and how to think a little better, because now it's taking information and thinking about it and understanding it. It's just not regurgitation of knowledge. Okay, now you have to use it and understand it. So we talk about school age children and school age. What are they? I mean, this is my dissertation. It's all on school age children. It is children's attitude and behavior towards injections. So I'm really into pain and, children in comfort. School age children are ages 6 to 12. And it's a broad group of ages, and they grow a lot. They go from that baby and they go into almost an adult, that young adult by age 12. It starts with their baby teeth falling out and the permanent teeth coming in, and it ends with puberty. When puberty starts, that's the beginning of adolescence. We know children at the beginning, they're just very awkward and gawky, and it becomes more graceful in their actions. It's a physical and an emotional maturity, but be careful. Not all children, they can look older than what they are. Make sure you look at their age and do development the way you go to them as in their developmental stages. Now, again, just like toddlers, preschool, school age children, they don't grow as quick as those infants. Those infants is like massive growth in the first year. It slows down, but look, by the end of 6 years to 12 years, their weight almost doubles and their height goes up 1 to 2 feet. But again, it's slow. It's per year. There's 6 years that's going on. And by the end of school age, girls and boys are still the same. It's like all of a sudden, I think when they go into from 7th to 8th grade or 8th to 9th grade, all of a sudden they like grow like crazy. I always said, take a picture of your child when they leave 8th grade. When they go into 9th grade, they look different. They mature overnight, it seems. And I have a picture of my daughter and my son doing it. My son was a little peanut, 5'2" and nothing. And he went into high school, was a little bit taller. He took a year later because, boys are later. But all of a sudden he was 5'10", and, later on he actually ended up at 6'4". But, earlier he was very tiny. So again, movements are more graceful than those of preschool. They're getting more coordinated. They have more muscles. They have less fat going on. Head circumference has nothing to do with chest. It's more about their height. And again, their face changes. And I love it. The age of all I want for Christmas is my 2 front teeth, right? At 6 years old, their teeth are falling out. I think it's the cutest thing. And the tooth fairy's going to come and we're going to give them what it used to be a quarter for me. And that was a big deal. They want $1 now. I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's what most parents do.
$5.
Their
$5.
bladder becomes more mature. That means you can go on road trips. They don't have to stop as frequently to urinate. Their chest and their heart, it's more in proportion. The heart isn't as huge, so it doesn't take, so it's a little bit more relation to the body. So they're 6 years old. They've gone through all the oral, all of the swapping the spit. It's toddlers and preschoolers. They've gotten all of these viruses and all of these infections. And now their immune system is getting really strong because of the exposure. As infants, I've told you, their bones are soft and they're malleable. Now they're getting into school age. They're becoming more ossified, which means they're more brittle. So they can crack easier. Infants don't crack as easier because they're softer. And again, I'll warn you, physical maturity, the way they look, doesn't mean emotionally and socially they're where you think they are. So remember to look at the age before you try to get on their developmental level. So prepubescent, this is at the end of school age children. We know that the end is all about puberty. Now, do you remember being in 5th grade and you thinking, boys are really silly and they're stupid? Well, the reason is because boys don't mature and go through puberty to age 12. So 2 years difference. The girls are getting more mature. They're going through their menses and growing up and going through their puberty. Boys haven't gotten there yet. So that's one thing to remember. Girls age 10, boys age 12. Now, again, you've got a broad range of looking at school age children. So when you're explaining it, make sure you explain it where children understand. Remember, children, if you explain things, they're going to do things and not be afraid, run out of the room, down the hall, and out the front door. I mean, if you tell them, they're going to get an X-ray. A 6-year-old boy might think, oh my God, X-ray vision and heat's going to come and it's going to go through my body and put holes in me and it's going to hurt, right? You don't say an X-ray. You say, you know, there's this big camera and it's up on the wall and it's going to make noises and moving and it just goes click, click, doesn't hurt you. There's no feeling with it, but I can see the insides of your body. And I can tell you, I show my children if they had a broken arm. I showed my children if they have a pneumonia or their chest, or I'm going to show them what's going on because they're like, wow, look at that. And then they can understand because they can see it. You know, looking at the abdomen, we inspect, we auscultate, we percuss, we palpate. We know lymph nodes, we talked about it in the cahoots last week. They're non-palpable if you're healthy and you're feeling good. The hypoglossal nerve, you know, cranial nerve 9, stick your tongue out. You know, that's how we're going to evaluate, you know, if that nerve is doing okay. And remember, children, you know, adults aren't as much, but children have a lot of upper airway mucus. So if you do bronchial breath sounds, you're actually listening to if there's gurgling going on up here. But if you don't listen to the lungs, you have breath sounds. So remember, you put the stethoscope over the trachea, right, the substernal notch in between those two clavicles there. This is where you're going to hear, you know, bronchial breath sounds. But again, it's a lot of upper airway stuff going on. Now, Freud is all about, you know, oral as the infants, right? They explore the world through their mouths. But as they get older, they talk about relationships. And he talks about that relationships in school age are all around same-sex peers, girls and girls and boys and boys. It's a rarity that you see a boy and a girl in school age that are going to be, you know, their peers, their friends. Erikson. Now, Erikson in school age is one of those things you're going to see a lot of questions on. You see it on the NCLEX, you see it on the HESI, you see it on exams, and it talks about what? So this is one to really pay attention to. So Erikson, what does he say? It's industry versus a sense of inferiority, okay? What is an industry? Well, some children are good at sports. They're running the fast, so they feel good. That's their industry. It's a task they do well. There's some children who do really well in spelling or math or writing or reading, you know, and these children, that's their task. It's a feeling, what do I do good? And they get praise from it. So sense of industry is the task they do and they do well, feel good about it and get praise. Now, every kid can't do everything well, right? You have kids that are good with, you know, classwork, but are klutzes on the field. They can't run, they can't hit a ball, they can't throw it, but they feel a sense of inferiority because they want to do it and they can't. So you have the feelings of accomplishment, which is industry, and feelings of inferiority, with things they can't do. Two important concepts there. Now, Piaget, again, more logical now, feeling they're understanding things a lot better. I mean, initially, the pre-operational is like you had to show them stuff. Then you get to concrete operational, and now they're starting to put two and two together. They're understanding relationships between things. Another thing is this concept of conservation. Now, I always explain it like this. I was a single parent with a boy and a girl. And on Fridays or Saturdays, I'd go shopping and I'd buy them 2 boxes of Little Debbie cakes. And that was their treat when they came home from school before dinner, before I could make it. They knew if they ate it all in 1 or 2 days, by the time it got to Thursday, Friday, they wouldn't have them. So they learned to conserve. Another way they do things like this is you could take 2 glasses, different shapes, pour the liquid from one to the other. One looks different than the other, but they know it's still the same amount of liquid in there. One is not more than the other. Doesn't matter if it's a ball of clay, flat clay, it's the same clay. They're understanding this logic here. Whether it's in the same shape, whether it's in the same line, they're understanding it's still the same number of items here. So they're starting to get more logical. Now, Kohlberg again is all about, good and bad and consequences for it. And at this point, these children don't want to be punished. They want the rewards. But you know something? They're going to understand, I shouldn't do that. But I want to eat that cookie before dinner because I know that I'm going to eat dinner and go to bed. And it's okay. So the punishment is okay. They know that bad is something that they want to do. But they understand the good and the bad and how to do it right and how to do it, within what they want. Remember spiritual development, and as nurses getting with these children, their school age, allowing them to understand what their spirituality is and giving that moment is good. And I always say, if you don't understand another sort of spirituality, ask the child, ask the parents. They are going to be so glad to talk to you. As again, they have concrete terms, which means this is what the parents taught me. This is what I know, and they also understand and believe that whatever their name for God is, they do something wrong, they're going to get a punishment. I've had many a child come into the emergency room and they have, appendicitis, need to go to surgery. And I used to sit down next to them because I understood this concept. And I said, you didn't do anything wrong for this to happen. It's just a piece of your intestines that says, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. And these children would actually feel calmer because they did believe God was punishing them because yesterday they didn't do good on the exam or quiz, or they hit their sister, or they did something wrong. So it does work to talk to these kids and tell those things. Now, socially, these children are starting to get more into peer groups. Same-sex peers is a big, big, big concept. It's a big thing that school-age kids do. I mean, Freud says that's what it is, but they do. They want to be what their peers are. They might say, well, my peer or my friend, Peter wants to play soccer, but I wanted to play baseball, but I'm going to play soccer because my peer, my buddy, wants to play, so I'm going to change my sport. And they will do that. It's very, very influenced there. They've got a great influence on what they do. Now there's clubs, there's groups, there's peer groups, there's Girl Scouts, there's Boy Scouts, there's, all sorts of sports teams, whether it be kickball, whether it be soccer, whether it is baseball, as they get older, Little League, there's all these groups that go on. Remember that parents need to be involved because there's going to be a lot of bullying. What if they strike out and they lose the game? The other kid's going to say, hey, you struck out and you made us lose a game, and that kid's going to feel bad. So make sure that the parents are there. They're going to be adults, not their friends, but to help them to understand about winning and losing. It doesn't matter winning or losing. Did you try your hardest? That's all that matters. And getting into these sort of groups and functioning in another group with another adult watching them does start that independence away from parents. Because before that, it's all parents, right? Up to preschooler, parents, had, the final say. They were the person who ran the life mostly. As I always said from the beginning, play is integral in any part of any kid's life. The rules, the rituals help them grow up, realize, that this has to be done in order to win. It's just like getting prepared how to get a job later on, right? Or going to college, what they need to do in order to succeed. They work together in teams, they work alone. And as they succeed and do well, it helps them, their ego helps them feel better. They're being aware of what they do good. They're being aware of whatever their customs and religions and whatever they believed in. They're very aware of that. And now they're starting to become aware of what they look like, what they dress like, what their hair is. Is it too curly? Is it too straight? My eyes are blue. I've got freckles, like whatever. They're starting to realize these sort of things. They're also starting to realize other children are different. There are a lot of adults now that affect a child's life in school age due to school, due to aftercare, due to clubs, due to sports, and these are significant in that raising of that child. So giving positive strokes helps them feel better, and it helps them as they grow up, as they learn that it's not just staying home, it's just not mom and dad, and getting them ready to leave the home, when they're going to college or moving out of the house. Their body image, they're starting to see, the biggest thing is hair and eye color. If you have blue eyes and curly hair, everybody talks about it, right? Body image, they're starting to see fat, skinny, tall, short. They see differences. And again, they're going to know that children, they wear glasses or they have braces or, they have hearing aids. Something's going on. As I said, you start with, this infant, this preschooler, and now you put them in kindergarten. It's a little different than even preschool. It's a big different structure. They're expected to be there longer. You don't have this nap time. It's not just playtime. It has to sit, follow directions, and work with other children. So this is a big, big area where children are subjected to, that these teachers need to help them to learn, and to learn their values. And also remember, you've got their friends. And their friends start telling them what they do, how they do, and they start learning about other kids in other ways, and they have to open their mind to understand this. Nutrition, 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 nutrition. As I said, all through childhood, even into, adulthood. Absolutely, nutrition is very important. They're starting to develop what they like to eat, what they don't like to eat. But the important part is that they're eating. Now, how do we know if nutrition is good? We've gone through toddlers, preschoolers, and they don't like to eat much. They're very finicky. You have school-age children, they tend to eat more. But, nutrition, how do we know it's working? Well, we measure height, we measure weight. We know if they're growing, gaining weight at a proper balance, not too much, not too little, they're doing good. And if they don't have enough nutrition, their growth chart's low, we can increase the amount of nutrition. And if they're getting overweight, there are ways that we can teach them how to scale back and not to eat as much. And that's about that My Plate. It's an online program, and it shows them proper food groups to eat. Today, 2 parents have to work, if you're lucky to have 2 parents in the household, right? So sometimes these school-age children come home, they have homework to do, they've got to take their bath, read a book, go to bed. It's like too much, dinner time. So fast food comes into the house because it's easier to manage. Remember, fast foods are extra calories on these children, but it's understandable. It's just the way it is. But children still need to know what should be the best choices. Now, school-age children are starting to get heavier, overweight. They're tending to be more obese. It's an epidemic proportions, but why? Well, years ago, when I was a kid, which is a long time ago, there weren't any TV programs, cartoons when I came home from school. It was only on Saturday mornings or very early in the morning. When these children come home, the TV is on. And then, of course, they have their computers, they have their video games, they have their phones, and they're just on there, and they're not moving, having snacks, not moving, and they're going to be gaining weight, okay? Sometimes they can't go outside because of the neighborhoods, low income, but the one thing that we have to understand, school-age children, if we let them get too big and too overweight, they do have an increased risk for high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol because they have these cardiometabolic changes and it's hard to change them. So, what do we have to do for these children? Well, it should start in, having that baby, being pregnant, that prenatal period, where what the mother eats in order to give nutrition to that baby. We know that it doesn't matter where you come from, what ethnic group you come from, everybody can be overweight, does not matter. You're rich, poor, black, white, green, purple, doesn't matter. The thing is, if we are going to do something, that school-age children should be targeted to teach them. The one thing that I've seen with school-age children is they do a lot of programs like Dare to Keep Kids Off Drugs. And now they're doing My Plate and going into nutrition and teaching them. They're very into pleasing. So it's a great time, in these kids' life to teach. One of the other things that tends to happen is school-age children's parents say, you can't get up until you finish your plate. And, I know that many kids don't eat much and they go off and you're worried if they're not eating enough. Well, they're not going to get a snack. They're not going to get dessert. If they're full, they're full. Don't make them overeat, because what that starts is, I always have to finish my plate, whether I'm hungry or not. And, sometimes you're busy, just want to do something else. Okay. But as long as they're not eating junk in the end, what you're teaching them is they eat till they're full and they stop. School-age children, they don't sleep as much as the younger kids. The younger of school-age children fight going to bed. I need a glass of water. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to kiss daddy. I need another hug. Can I read a book? This is what happens. But the older kids, they're not going to fight. When they're tired, they go to bed. Sports are good. It shows working with a group towards a common goal. But remember, there is a lot of stuff that goes on with playing sports. A lot of pressures, a lot of bullying from other kids, bullying from parents on the stands yelling, hey, hit that ball. Hey, why'd you strike out? Feeling bad about themselves. So remember, parents need to be there to support them. And the coaches need to be there to say, hey, you tried hard. It's okay. But, that's very difficult. Kids love competition, right? They love to win. I have a almost 6-year-old grandson, and this kid playing board games, any game, he wants to win. And if he doesn't, he's angry. But we're not just going to give it to him. We need to make him earn it properly. Dental health. Now, they should be brushing their teeth before they go to bed, minimum, okay? Now, flossing is great, but remember, younger kids, ages 6 and 7 and younger, don't have manual dexterity to floss properly. So as long as they're brushing their teeth, they're doing good. Many children do things like getting on the side of a swimming pool and they bop their teeth and a tooth falls out. The whole tooth with the root, front teeth, and now remember, school age, these are permanent teeth. You know what it is to put a root, putting a post and a permanent tooth and going to the dentist? It's a lot of money. Do you realize if you take that tooth, root and all, put it into some cold milk, and bring it to either a pediatric dentist or a hospital that treats pediatric children, they can reinsert that tooth. What they do is they numb the area, they push it back up in there, they put them on a soft diet for several days, they check them, and many times that tooth will re-implant. It will work again. And that's a lot cheaper than trying to get that whole dental work and replacing a tooth. They're into sex play, they're into curiosity, understanding. Maybe, they're 6 to 12. They've walked in on mom and dad, they've heard mom and dad, whatever. Now they have some questions. Remember, you need to find out first, what do they know? And then answer the questions with them. It's very important that parents keep that communication line open. I mean, as they get older, we have a school nurse that can assist with it. But the younger part of school age, this is something where parents should be able to talk with them. My parents never did, but it should. If you find the kid is sitting there as parents and they're playing with themselves in front of people, say, could you go in your room? I don't care what you do, but go in your room. Don't make it nasty wrong, because it's normal. People touch themselves. It's normal. And again, you need open communication with parents. School nurses. Now, I think if I look back at my life, I probably would have been a school nurse, because I could have been off all those holidays with my kids, summers with my kids, all that good stuff. And I think school nurses have a bigger role today. When COVID came out, I was like, oh my God, these poor school nurses, they had to be with the CDC asking questions, knew what to do. They were getting questions like crazy. What do I need to do to help my child? COVID, la, 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 right? They do all sorts of things. They, do assessments on health. They educate. When you have an outbreak of a disease like meningitis, they inform parents what's going on and what they need to do to help care of their children. They're there for like children with ADHD and helping parents deal with it and to get them to the proper referrals or advise them. And school age children, they go up and out and play, and there's just no thought about protecting themselves. So make sure children are protected with proper equipment for any sports that they're in. Always motor vehicle accidents, running over them, on them, in them, is all the biggest injuries that we have in school age children. You should be in the rear seat till they're 13 years old and in a booster seat till they're 8. I didn't know that. I mean, I was ended up being a single parent. My kids were 9 and 11. And, after it was just me and my kids, they would call shotgun for the front seat to sit with me. And the 9-year-old and 11-year-old shouldn't have been there yet, right? I didn't know that. They've learned so much through research. And children should have helmets on if they're riding their bike. Head injuries are bad. One of the things that I saw that had probably the biggest impact of injuries were those little hover devices that came out a couple of years ago. And they didn't have something to hold on, and they would be hovering, and they were expensive. And it came out for Christmas. That Christmas season, I saw 2 boys come in, bilateral fractured wrists, radial and ulnar fractured. So now they had cast on both hands because they didn't have any wrist protectors on. I mean, they had helmets on, but what about the wrists? Also, trampolines should not be used. And if you look in my neighborhood, there's trampolines all over. So one thing about being in school age, children have been under the umbrella of the parents and they've been watching closely and the parents have been in total control. Well, parents got to give up some control now. So it's hard for parents to do that. Now, parents need to still be there watching. They still need to be parents, not friends, but realize that there are other adults, other children that are going to influence them. Now, I mentioned ADHD and the school nurse because what happens with children with ADHD and they go to school? They can't sit, they can't complete a task, they're always moving, and they're probably disrupting the whole class because that's what these children do. So many times the teacher will say, go to the school nurse. Well, if the school nurse is seeing that kid constantly coming down because they're disrupting the class, they're going to have to call in for the school nurse parent conference. The one thing that's advised, if you have to have a parent in, first listen, see what they have tried to do to help these kids. Don't think that they're just spoiled kids and the parents are doing nothing. They could have done so much. They could have eliminated all of the privileges at home. No video, no television, no this, no that. And they're still hyperactive. They need guidance. So listen first and then make that plan of care for these children. So a child has an avulsed, knocked out tooth. The parents are reluctant to try to push it back in there. I don't think I would either. Where should the tooth be placed for transport? Absolutely. I've been asked why cold milk. And the only thing I can think of is that milk has calcium in it. And maybe it's a thing that keeps that root alive, but I know it works. So that's the only thing I could think of is the calcium in the tooth, and it helps it keep it good. Adolescents. Now, I call this the roller coaster ride. I was single parent raising two adolescents at the same time. They were 17 months apart, a boy and a girl. And I just had to hold on tight, never give up. They're in that transition between being a kid and wanting to be an adult with all of doing what they want to do when they want to do. It's rapid physical, cognitive, social, and emotional maturation. They're given more responsibilities and they want more responsibilities. It starts with those beginning sexual characteristics or going through puberty, and it ends when they stop with their body growth. Somewhere between 18 and 20. I tell you this story is I sent my son to the Army. I told him, you want, to get anywhere in life, you didn't do good in school, but you graduated. So you want to do something with life and you've tried all of these menial jobs and you can see they're just a lot. Go into a service, pick what you like. So he did. He went into the Army. 2 years later, all of a sudden, he comes home. I mean, he did in between, but it was like 2 years later, I realized at age 21, all of a sudden, my kid was 6'4" and 220 pounds. And I sent him 5 foot, 10, 147 pounds. Can you imagine if he was home, what I'd have to do to feed this kid? So the Army fed him. So I was really, really happy with that. So what happens as they grow? Adolescents. Remember, they start out as kids, and all of a sudden they're starting to go through puberty. They're starting to get boobs. They're starting to, get facial hair, voices change, etc. So tanners, you need to know tanners, okay? And that's the next slide. But boys, first pubescent change, their testicles get bigger. They get, drooper more and they get bigger. Girls, the first thing you see is breast buds. So it's, boys, you don't normally see that. I didn't with my son, but my daughter, I noticed with her t-shirts, I saw little breast buds, right? So I knew that they were going to be going through puberty, and, her period, et cetera, was coming on. Now, also during this time, as they, go from school age into adolescence, they start this adolescent growth spurt. As I said, my kid went from what, 5'7", actually 5'2" to 6'4" between ages 12 to 21. I mean, he grew like a weed. But you will see most of the time, adolescents initially, when they're getting through puberty, will grow 20 to 25% of their total height. This is almost as much growth as infants do. This is huge. It's over 2 to 3 years, okay? And we know that during this time, again, nutrition, right? They've got to keep up with all of this growth that's going on. I mean, voice changes in both girls and boys, and, obesity is different, but, it's that growth spurt, and there's a lot of things that can happen during that time. Now, Erickson. All right. Erickson are, theorists. What does Erickson say? Well, you've gone from being a kid, and now you're growing up to be an adult, and they are confused, and they're frustrated, and they're looking for their sense of identity. And in many different ways, whether it is, do I like girls? Do I like boys? Do I like both? Do I like nobody? Right? Do I want to be what when I grow up? They're trying to figure out who they want to be. Their body image is like insanely important at this point, and what they are is very important for, how they feel about themselves. They're trying to now find a group to get away from mom and dad and feel important. They want to be a part of a group of their peers, right? They are what we call intense sociability, intense loneliness. And I describe it like this. So you're a girl, you got a best friend, your peer, it's a girl, it's your best friend, and you've been telling her that you and this guy have been talking and you think he's cute and you want to go out with him. And all of a sudden you see your best friend kissing this guy. Now you don't have a best friend. Now you don't have this guy, and you were all like happy and everything is wonderful and good. And now it's like intense sociability to intense loneliness, and a lot of depression and a lot of, emotional turmoil is caused by that. It's all because of the wanting to fit in with their peers. Then you got parents, us parents, they want to do what they want to do. I call it with struggling between privileges and responsibility. Parents, all they want their children to do is be the best that they can be. They want them to do good in school. They want them to do their chores, and then they can have privileges. Well, adolescents don't really understand that all the time. They're like, well, I didn't do it. Okay, but I'm still going out. One of the big ages that you see all this frustration and conflict over independence and control is those ages 15 to 17. Those are the ages where they think they're old enough, their voices have changed, maybe they're getting a little hair on their chin, they're getting bigger, they're looking more adult, and they want to do what they want. But they don't want to do all of the responsibility that's required to get privileges. So what is recommended? To sit down with the parents and make a contract. What is okay? What do I need to do this? And, having the child, the adolescent, and the parents together make a mutual agreement what they can do, what they can't do, according to what. So the one thing about parents, is they don't really want them. It's a lot of turmoil, okay? But again, parents still need to be parents, okay? They, can be their friend, but they still need to be consistent with their rules and their guidelines. So parents go from wanting to protect these children to be, okay, you can go as long as you do your responsibilities. It's a really hard time. It really is. Peers are so important, right? Peers are their everything. They want to be with their buddies in them, as I used to call it, because it provides that sense of belonging and that feeling of strength, power, that they're accepted by these people. Best friends are also very important. And usually it's still same-sex friends, still. And what has been said is that how you treat your best friend as an adolescent is how you're going to treat your partner in life. So how do we as nurses talk to adolescents? Remember, they're headstrong. You are a threat too. I mean, especially I was an older person trying to talk with them, like, I'm not talking with her. You're just like my mom and dad, right? So again, we know how to approach the younger children, minimal touch, get on their level, talk about something, get them, comfortable, and then showing them stuff and they can do things. Well, adolescents aren't that way, but there's a way to do it. So tell me about, what do you like to do for fun? Are you going to go to college? Hey, listen, I saw you listening to some music. What sort of music you listening to? You have started to pay interest. Or maybe this child was a girl dressed more like a male, more malish, saying, so what do you want me to call you? Because that could be important, which means you have paid attention. And that adolescent, they will try to help you. Now, we know that adolescents should speak with parents, but there's just all of this, fighting going on at this point. Remember, as a nurse, we can recommend that school nurse. Immunizations for adolescents, HPV. And remember, boys and girls can both get it. Nutrition and adolescence. Ever be an adolescent, you go get a Nutri-Grain bar and you get a bottle of water, throw it in your backpack and leave. And, that's what you're going to eat for the day because you don't have time. You're just so busy. So you're really not getting proper nutrition. Now, if something happens and they're not well and they're going through health issues, how do we put this back on track? Whether they're overweight, whether they're underweight, whether there's some medical condition, have them do a 24-hour diary of their food so we can see how they're eating. I mean, many adolescents go all day long, don't eat, come home and eat dinner. I mean, that could be what it is. Sleep, remember, they're going through this huge growth spurt. As an adolescent, they should sleep. No, they don't. So what do adolescents do? Well, they are doing their homework because they want to get in the best college. They are texting and talking to their buddies and them because that's important to them. They're playing their video games, they're doing whatever, and they're not getting the sleep that they need because of their social activities, right? They should exercise, but there's no time. Dental health, I would hope that they'd be able to brush their teeth in the morning and at night. But, adolescents are going to do what they want to do. Sexuality, we know that sex is all over the place today, more than ever. So again, where should they get the information? Say with their buddies? No, because they are not probably been taught properly. So through the parents, through the school nurse, and Planned Parenthood is there, and they will speak to adolescents, okay? And, as nurses, they don't have to, let's say they come into the emergency room. Let's say it's a girl. They come into the emergency room and they're having their third urinary tract infection for the year. And you've had them before. You're like, oh, I remember you. This is what happened before, right? Well, open up the conversation. I heard you listening to music. Are you going to school? You play sports, whatever. Open that, avenue of conversation and then kick the parents out of the room. Okay? Talk to them one-on-one. Let them vent. Let them talk about what's going on. They might, and tell them, you do not have to tell the parents what they say. Very important. The only time you have to tell them if they're going to hurt themselves or others. Okay? This is a personal conversation. And these children, they're going to tell you stuff. And sometimes you are going to be blown out of your mind what things that they're going to tell you that they're doing. And not looking shocked is actually really hard sometimes. Safety, injury. Well, talk about adolescents. It is now they're getting motor vehicle licenses. They can drive. So it gets scarier. It's not just being in the car, being ran over the car or in by the car. It's now that they are driving it. Again, firearms is huge in adolescence. They're going to say, well, I'm big enough now, I could touch daddy's gun. Or maybe they get into the wrong, gangs. Sports injuries are big. They want to be the best competition, maybe they don't work out well, or they don't think first, they're just, I'm an adolescent, I can do what I want, go for it. So injury prevention, teaching children proper equipment is important. So Matt is a 14-year-old. He's eating all the time, but his weight is appropriate for his height. The best explanation for this is what? 14, that's that pre-adolescent growth spurt, isn't it? He's doing what he needs to do. It is normal, absolutely normal. They're feeding their bodies because it's growing so big. Any questions? So who wants to win a Kahoot tonight? Anybody? Celia, you want to win the Kahoots tonight?
I'll try. I came out
Yesenia,
of
how
my
about you?
community exam feeling very.
I know all of
for
you are like this. I know. I
We
understand.
look crazy, right? Because our minds have been. Yeah,
I
that's how we
understand.
feel.
I just had like a med surge exam yesterday, and it was that new NCLEX style. Yeah,
We had med surge times too. That's what happened. So I apologize.
understand.
We don't have anything left.
I get it. I understood it. I've
We're
heard
jacked
this
up.
from other professors, and I was at a meeting today. That's why I canceled my 5 o'clock review. I went back and redid it because it's a different exam. I did that.
I appreciate it.
For you.
We're going to that new NCLEX, right? We need
now,
it.
Now, it's not going to be like MedSurge 2, but it's a different types of questions. I've not seen it, but I was a party to the making of the exam. So I know the concepts that they're looking for. So I went back and redid the PowerPoint, added things for you to think about more. But I'm telling you, my Kahoots are still spot on. And this PowerPoint will be there for you. And I do that because I care. All right.
Thank you, Professor.
No, you're always
Thank you,
welcome.
Professor.
Professor,
Yes.
Can you do the Kahoot now? So I can see it in the recording later because I have my daughter sick. I can participate in the Kahoot.
Yes, it's no problem. It's no problem. I get it. We have other responsibilities besides school.
Yeah, but you are doing the Kahoot now, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Thank you so much.
Give me a second. I'm going to go to the ladies' room.
What I put the number? Where I put the number? Where? For the Kahoot.
Just click on join Kahoot
It says their game
in
pin.
the app.
It's kahoot.it, and you put in the game pin, and it will work.
You're on the website Kahoot, Victoria?
Oh, I need to go to the website.
On your
Okay,
phone,
okay.
on your phone.
Or you can do it from the app on your phone too.
I'm gonna get started
Okay.
so we get going. Week 3 already, guys. It goes quick. School age adolescent children. How does the onset of pubertal growth spurt compare in girls and boys? Remember I told you girls think that boys are stupid, remember? Because they go quicker than boys.
Yellow, the yellow. Yellow.
So girls are quicker than boys. So it's 10 girls and it's 12 in boys. At what age should a parent expect to have major conflicts over independence and control with their child? I love this picture. Reminds me of me and my son. Like, can't you just understand me?
I'm not able to see it. Are we supposed to be playing or seeing it?
If you are on your phone, you're only going to get the red, yellow, blue, and green. You also need the computer for your screen.
Professor, I'm sorry, I cannot get in. Can I have the pin?
Your PIN is 716-2582.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Not a problem. As I said, I don't mind you stopping me. Any question, doesn't bother me. Signs of the onset of puberty in girls. What do girls start with? What do boys start with?
I'm sorry. So if I'm in the computer, I'm not gonna be able to see anything. I can only see the colors. I don't see the response or anything.
You need to be in the computer to watch the Kahoots game on my Zoom, and you need a phone and go to kahoot.it, and then you'll see the colors. You just push the colors on the phone. You need 2 devices.
Oh, okay.
Understand? So girls
Yes.
start with puberty in girls. Onset of puberty girls is your breast buds. All of a sudden you see them, you know it's coming. The onset of puberty in boys is characterized by, now this is something that as a mother, I didn't see, I didn't know. It was more of the voice changing in my son that I saw. But if I would be looking, this is what would happen. And that is testicular enlargement. So girls are breast buds, boys are testicular enlargement. What do we use to determine if a female has reached the age of menarche? So, you know, we're showing these signs and symptoms. There is a way to look at this, you know, chart of looking at, okay, they have this and this and that. Where are they in that stage? And there's 5 stages. There is that child stage, and the 5th is the adult stage. It's Tanner's stage. And this is something that they're looking at more and more when they're doing the exams, even on your NCLEX. So please review that Tanner staging, very important. The source of injury, whether intentional or unintentional, in adolescence is associated with what? And then I say, does it matter what age child? It's all the same. motor vehicle accidents. And as I said, the thing that makes me even more scared is now they're driving the car also, which also gives more accidents for those adolescents. If a parent feels uncomfortable talking about sex education, who's a good resource? You know, I lived in a parents that were very old fashioned. I had 6 brothers and I was the second to youngest, the only girl. And they never, ever, ever, my mother never talked to me about this. The school nurse is the greatest one to go to talk to with any questions for it. But as adolescents get older, also, they do have Planned Parenthood, which can help them, and they will see them even if they're not 18 yet. A 9-year-old friend tell him soccer is a dumb game and he should play baseball. What does this mean? Does this happen? So we know that school age children, especially the end of school age, anywhere between ages 9 to 12, very important, same-sex peers, and they want to please them and they want to be with their peers that they like. So very important, and they will change from baseball to soccer if that's what they want, or soccer to baseball, they will. During the admission, the father of the 16-year-old says, "We are Buddhist. Culturally competent and care includes what?" You know, the one thing I think that we forget is this is a 16-year-old kid. We can ask the kid too, can't we? We want to know what he feels. I mean, respect the father, of course, but the kid is also important. So ask if their preferences in their care. And the other thing I would say is ask the child too, because they're important and they have their feelings too. When teaching sex education and contraceptive for adolescents, what should the nurse consider? So they're asking you all these questions about sex and contraceptives and, you know, diseases and whatever. What are some things you need to remember? So when you're talking to them, you give them oral education, but give them something in the written form. They can go back and they can, you know, look at it to make sure they're doing things right. Teenagers need contraceptive education, both orally and written, so they can go back and they can look. A multi-select. The management of adult obesity should include, so you have an adolescent and they're overweight. How are you going to help this kid? So number one is the big thing, is that 24-hour diary of all the foods, but give them their favorite food somewhere within the diet. To use the versional, that's younger kids. It's not going to work on adolescents. And using nutritious foods, well, I'm sorry, I'm an adolescent, nutritious foods, if I don't like them, it's not going to matter to me. So give me a food I want and let me show you what I'm eating in a 24-hour period. Infants go through a predictable sequence of growth and development. This is called what? I do throw in questions from previous lectures just to give you those concepts again so that you can think about it. I mean, those sequences are what? Lifting their head, turning over, creeping, crawling, walking. This is predictable, right? It's called sequential trends. It happens in a sequence, okay? Which benchmark serves as the ending period for school-age children? We know school-age children, it begins with the shedding of their baby teeth and the beginning of their permanent teeth. At the end is what? Before they become adolescents. It's the onset of puberty, right? That's when they start to get the breast buds and the testicles become bigger. It's the beginning of that. Which action would improve dental health in the school-age child? So I'm going to say it is, yes, have the child floss. Remember, 6 and 7-year-old children, which are school age, do not have that manual dexterity to floss yet. So at least brushing their teeth in the morning and before they go to bed, very, very important. Generally, the earliest age at which puberty begins is? It's 10 in girls, 12 in boys, right? They're 2 years apart. An 8-year-old says that she has cancer because God is punishing her for being bad. Why does she say that? It's absolutely common. You know, I've worked in the emergency room the last 10 years of my career at Nicholas Children's, and I'd have many a child school age come through that had appendicitis. And I would sit down next to this child and say, listen, you didn't do anything wrong. There's a piece of your intestines that says, hey, I just don't want to be here anymore, and I need to take it out, but you didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't that you hit your sister. It wasn't that you did bad on your exam. It's just something that happened. And these children understand what I'm saying. And you can actually watch their shoulders relax and they feel better. It does work for me to say that to them. A 6-year-old needs a chest x-ray. What explanation is the best? Again, that camera is better than saying an x-ray, not hurting. They don't understand that, but they understand what a camera is and taking a picture. How do you get an adolescent to open up about their sexual history? So when you want them to open up again, like getting on the level of a child when they're younger and saying, you know, nothing at first, don't touch, minimal touch, and getting into, oh, you've got a great shirt on, you know, you're going to start with, so what was that music you listened to? I see you got the really cute little sneakers on. Where'd you get them? I'd like to get them for whoever. It opens up that door. Then you can talk to the adolescent. They'll be more apt to. Now you're less threatening. How do you get an adolescent to be more receptive to talking about their health and sexual exploration? So now you've opened up, you've talked about your social life. They want to go to school. They want to become an engineer. They want to go to this school. They like this music. Get the parents out of the room. I know that I would never, ever, ever talk to anybody about these subjects with my parents in the room. I would be scared to death. I mean, my parents were old fashioned. I mean, you know, I'm older, so it's even more old fashioned. So again, get the parents out. You don't have to tell the parents what happened as long as it's not going to hurt them or others. A multi-select. When educating adolescents about the risk for HIV and hepatitis, what would you include? I mean, we know many adolescents become sexually active. I mean, if abstinence, of course, that's the best thing. Condoms, absolutely, you know, should be given if they are going to be sexually active. Washing the hands work, and I sure hope they take more than weekly showers. A child has a knocked out tooth. Where should the tooth be placed for transport to the dentist? I just think it's pretty neat. We can save thousands and thousands of dollars by reimplanting these teeth. And you put it in cold milk. And that's what works, keeps that nerve on the root of that nerve of that tooth, you know, ready, and we can reimplant. A nurse caring for a school-age child should know which thought process is seen. You know, we talked about school age, and I was talking about little Debbie cakes, you know, and they're understanding what they need to do for the week, right? And it's about that ability to conserve. You know, when we talk magical thinking, that's your preschoolers. They talk about magical and they're talking to themselves and they've got their own little, you know, imaginary people. That's absolutely good. And the other stuff, no, but they, school age children. What age stage of Erickson would you use for a school age child? Erickson talks about what? What I do well. Am I good at math? Am I good at sports? Am I good at running? Is it spelling? Do I write the best? Do I play a piano good? And it's called industry versus inferiority. Trust versus mistrust is the infant. I trust when I cry, somebody's coming. These are theorists you need to know, okay? You're going to see questions on these all the way through your NCLEX. So please go back and review these. A multi-select. Anorexia nervosa is characterized by, I mean, I didn't put it in the lecture. I just wanted to mention it as one of those problems with nutrition. And we know it's very real in, you know, the adolescent stage, because they always think that they're not pretty enough, small enough, skinny enough, etc. It is in anorexia nervosa, it is all about fear of gaining weight. They don't eat, so it's severe calorie restriction because they have an unrealistic body image. Vomiting and purging is called bulimia. Now, how do you know the difference between anorexia nervosa and bulimia? Well, bulimia, you're vomiting, right? When you vomit, you have stomach acid. It will rot the teeth. So if you see a child, an adolescent, who is in this, you know, problem with, you know, denial about their weight, and they're bulimic, their teeth are going to be rotten. Anorexia nervosa, their teeth are going to be perfect because they're not eating at all, right? How do you know if you suffer from bulimia? So bulimia is all about vomiting. It's not starvation. They eat everything and then they vomit and vomit and vomit and vomit and get rid of the food. They eat it, run to the bathroom and vomit. Adolescents are what? So adolescents are that stuck between being the kid and being an adult, and they're so confused, right? They don't understand, they are troubled. There's so many things going on. They're being hurt in so many ways. So this is answers 1 and 2. I don't ever want to be an adolescent again. What is an adolescent's heart rate? Well, we learned what a infant was, right? So where do you think the adolescents fall? We know they're almost adults, adult heart rate 60 to 100, right? So where do you think the adolescent's heart rate falls? About 55 to 90. This is where they're a little bit less than your adults because their hearts are more efficient and they haven't had as much damage as adults. If I had an adolescent whose heart rate was 120, they're either in pain, they are dehydrated, or they have a fever. It's way too high. When talking with an adolescent regarding personal health concerns, what is most important? So you get alone with the adolescent, you've opened up the avenue, they're talking with you. What's important? Give them the opportunity to express their feelings open and honestly. And as I told you, be prepared for some things that you're like, oh my goodness, but don't look shocked because that's sometimes they're trying to do that. A parent says their infant puts everything in their mouth. Based on Freud's theory, you would respond how? So remember, an infant's mouth is the way they explore the world. It's just part of what they do. In addition to injuries, the leading cause of death in adolescents ages 15 to 19 are what? You think about adolescents and everything they're going through, how they want to explore, how they're feeling. And it's homicide and suicide. Remember, firearms are big. You know, of course, always motor vehicles, but then suicide, feelings of being less than, you know, and getting depressed because of what life's happening. So those are the two. In school age conflict of industry versus inferiority, what does industry mean? Industry is they can do a task, they can do it well. Whether it's writing, whether it's math, whether it's spelling, whether it's running fast, whether it's hitting the ball, doing sports, okay? Mastering a task is what they do well. Inferiority is what they cannot do. And they want to. Which age group prefers to be with members of their own sex? And that's about your 7 to 11 years old. You know, they really rarely will you see a boy and a girl. I mean, it's usually 2 boys or 2 girls. It's the way they relate better, but it's usually the end of school age. True or false? Home support is invaluable to the adolescent. You know, I know they don't want mom and dad, but do they need to have that support at home when they need it? When you have an adolescent and they're out trying to be, you know, all macho and who they are, and all of a sudden something happens, they need to have mom and dad there to support them when they come home to cry. Okay. So yes, they do need home support. And actually they do need them to keep them in line. Okay. Contraindication to administering the varicella vaccine to an adolescent. Well, the varicella vaccine is a live vaccine. What do you know about giving live vaccines? You cannot be immunosuppressed and you cannot be on steroids. It's a great med surg question that I just gave you here, all right? What clinical finding does not indicate an adolescent may be suffering from anorexia nervosa? Remember, there's 2 types of eating disorders, anorexia nervosa and bulimia. How do you know the difference? If you're bulimic, your teeth are going to be rotten. Anorexia, no. Good job. The risk of depression in transgender children is, now this has come to light with so many shows on TV today, and you know, there's a lot of more notoriety about this. So we're going to, as nurses, be working with these type of children, which is fine. They're still kids, they're still people. But depression is huge. Why? Well, you have people who don't accept them. You have children at school. You have families. You have teachers. Everybody is like against them in many different ways. So yes, there is an increased chance. A 14-year-old in the ED after a biking accident. How should the nurse interact with this adolescent? I mean, I've all told you that I was one of the big trauma primary nurses at Nicholas Children in the emergency room. Get a 14-year-old, they've been hit by a car, they're airlifted in. People are going to be running at them from all different places. And I'm sorry, I'd be scared to death. So I'm going to tell them, this is going to happen. It's going to happen quick. And I'm going to be answering questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to be, you know, coordinating what's going on around them. But my most important is that kid. What if that kid was bleeding out, okay? Had some wound, internal or not, and bleeding. Heart rate up, blood pressure up, what's gonna happen? They're gonna bleed more. So give them the explanations and help them keep calm. Cooperative play. It's from last week. Do you remember cooperative play? Cooperative, associative, parallel. So cooperative play is kids playing together and it's coordinated and there is a goal, which means somebody wins in the end, like checkers. What does moral development involve? Morality, right? Who talks about morality? What theorist? It's Kohlberg, right? What does Kohlberg say? Remember, Kohlberg's about right and wrong and a consequence for each. And, as you get older, you tend to manipulate right and wrong. And when you want to do right or wrong, and if it's better to be wrong because you need to do that versus right. So morality is a big thing, and it's all about Kohlberg. Developmental milestones are important to observe because of what? It's another question from a quiz from last week also. So if we're looking at developmental milestones, they're not up to where they need to be. We can get early intervention and we can prevent them from being further behind. Kids are resilient. They catch up so quick. Lymph nodes in children with normal findings. Do you remember from last week? It's part of our assessment in children. If a kid is normal, healthy, there should be nothing there. You will not feel anything. If you're feeling lymph nodes, something is going on. The right second intercostal space landmark of the heart is called. Again, this is part of an assessment. How do you assess the heart? What valve are you listening to here? And that's your aortic valve, okay? So if you didn't understand that, go back and look at that in part of your assessment. Which nerve controls critical movements of the tongue? I can even have infants stick their tongue out and move with me because remember, infants love to imitate. Toddlers do, preschoolers do. I mean, older kids you can ask, but the younger kids, they'll still do it. And it's cranial nerve number 9, the glossopharyngeal. Good. What type of breath sounds do you expect to hear over the trachea? Remember, children have a lot of upper airway mucus all the time. So are you listening to the upper airway part of the trachea and bronchus, or you're listening to the lungs and breath sounds? Very, very important concept in children. If you're listening to the trachea, it's the bronchus. So it could be a lot of upper airway sounds that you're listening to. Depriving a child of food, clothing, and shelter is what? What do we call that? And there's many different types of this that we see in children. Being deprived emotionally, medically, physically. It's all called neglect. And neglect could be as simple as having a child outside playing in 30-degree weather without a coat, and then the ball that they're playing in the front yard gets kicked into the street, and then a cop comes along and your kids have no coats on. They could say you're neglecting your children because they don't have a coat on. That is part of neglect. Which of the following immunizations is given in the adolescent stage? And then you can give it to boys and girls. And that's your HPV, your human papilloma virus vaccine. Yes, good job. ADHD most likely involves which of the following? How would you describe it? That's that inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity. They can't sit in the chair, right? And this is a child that probably is going to be sent to the school nurse, and the school nurse is going to eventually talking with the parents. Always remember, maybe the parents have done everything, they're at wit's end. Listen to them first before you draw a plan of care for these kids. And last question. Adolescents typically place blank on peer relationships. I call them the buddies in them. Do they need them? And absolutely, remember, adolescents, they, through their peers, this is how they get their identity. So it is a high value on them. Good job, guys. See how we did tonight? Who's number 3? Amber. Good job, Amber. Whoop, 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 whoop. Number 2, Judy, Jaddy, something. Number 1, CJ. And CJ is my grandson's initials. Nicole and Yenny. Good job, guys.
It's JDY's initials.
Okay, I love it. I want you to sign your attendance attestations. Make sure you get that done, okay? So you get credit for it. Remember, you have your quiz. I told you it's from last week's stuff, your NCLEX questions. And I will be replanning my review. So far, I'm getting responses for 4 o'clock on Saturday. So if you have a preference for Saturday, send me a message and I will let you know when it's a good time. Okay, and I'll let you know. I'll be reposting.
So you said the quizzes from last week's stuff, right? Like the
quizzes from last week's stuff, last week growth and development stuff, and you guys are totally prepared for it.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We did good tonight.